Right, are you ready to record, Rory?
I am now re-recording on a Yeti Nano Wasabi Butt Cheek mono recording channel.
Okay.
That needs to be the name of a microphone, the Wasabi Butt Cheek. Although, to be honest, isn't that what you have after a load of Japanese? Wasabi Butt Cheek.
That sounds like something John Peel should be introducing. Exactly. I'm coming next to the latest song from Wasabi Butt Cheek.
It does sound like a prog rock band, doesn't it?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Colorcast episode 155, sponsored by Kienda. I'm Steve Tudor.
Hi, I'm Andy Lewis.
I'm Sid Gill.
And I'm Rory Summers. I've got some facts for you, boys.
Facts? The redundant, defunct form of communication. You've got a fax machine.
No, I've got
clipboard.
Hang on. If I put my facts on my clipboard, would that make you feel better?
That would make me feel amazing, actually.
There we
go.
Absolutely
make my evening. There we go.
The facts are now on the clipboard. There we go. Right.
I'm slightly excited.
I wish he was lying.
Right, so on the 30th of September was International Podcast Day. So I decided to get myself some facts to put out a little social media post.
You had clearly nothing better to do at work yesterday, did you?
No. I had stuff I should have been doing at work.
Impressive.
But neglected it until today. Anyway, that notwithstanding, I thought I'd collate some information. So I've got some Polyhedron Collider facts. Obviously, we started on the 8th of February, 2016. That's the very first episode. And there have been a total of 166 episodes of the Polyhedron Collider cast.
So we have adopted the Grand Theft Auto numbering system. Well, there have been 5 formal ones, but there's about 10 games.
Well, we've got 3 live at Aircon, which don't count, 2 live at the UK Games Expo. We've got 3 interviews, a competition special, and a Storm King's Thunder special. Also, episode 23 was in 2 parts. So that's why we're actually only on 155 out of 166. Episodes.
What was the competition special? I don't
remember. That was
that
for the Dark Ages Kickstarter from Board and Dice. We gave away a copy of Dark Ages for whoever could design the best heraldry for the Polyhedron Collider.
Yes, I do remember that. Why did we give that away? It's a fucking good game. I want that back.
Why do we not have competitions anymore? We should have more competitions.
Right, you're putting me under an awful lot of pressure because I wasn't prepared for this. Can we just stick to the notes, please?
No, you should know by now.
We've got 166 episodes worth of annoying you to do.
Oh, hang on. It gets better, right? So in the 166 episodes, we have reviewed 589 games.
That's not bad going, actually.
So I had to go through Board Game Geek and write down the names of every game from all the lists. And then I had to deduplicate them, remove any of the nonsense, deduplicate, and then I had to remove all the nonsense bits from Board Game Geek to come down to 589. But that's not all, chaps. So far, to date, not including episode 155 or 167, depending on how you want to keep count, we have produced 222 hours, 34 minutes, and 11 seconds of Polyhedron Collider content. Which,
Shite,
fans,
as otherwise known,
is one game review every 23 minutes.
No. You've got that wrong because you haven't excluded the bullshit that fills an episode.
I have not counted the seconds spent talking bullshit. So,
and also there must be a fair few hours about Dunelm as well.
Oh, do you know what? I was actually busy at work yesterday, so I didn't have time to go back and find the first reference to Dunelm.
It was a while ago.
It
must have been when Steve moved, I reckon.
I know when it was. It was when the gaffer hit 40.
Why? Did he really needed some soft furnishing?
No, you're right. I think it was when I moved house, so it would be quite near the podcast. Actually, Sid, it wouldn't have been far off that, would it?
Yeah, something like that.
I reckon that's pretty close to your 40th, mate. I stand by my previous argument.
That must have taken a lot of time, Rory. A lot of time.
It did take me a little bit of time to do that.
And then what
work,
happened
yes.
yesterday evening?
Yesterday evening, I forgot to shower, eat, or get dressed in time to leave for Steve's house?
But because you would be doing this.
I was too busy doing that.
Oh, mate. That's a damning admission.
I got a phone call from the missus and she was like, I thought you were going to call me back. I was like, yeah, I'm going to call you back. I just need to, oh shit, look at the time.
Oh dear.
I had a really measly meal of beans on toast for dinner last night and then legged it to Steve's house.
Now wrong with beans on toast?
No. It just
I had
wasn't.
that for breakfast yesterday with cheese.
It's a fine breakfast, don't get me wrong. And it's an all-white lunch, but it's just not adequate for a dinner of a man of my proportions.
You had a bit of taco seasoning. You got a bit of pep in your beans. A nice strong cheese.
No, I had to cook and eat it within 5 minutes. I didn't have time for any fancy beans on toast.
Oh, you could
I
have
was lucky it got butter on the toast.
Not even a piece of artisanal sourdough.
Here we go. This is what happens in the Gill
Cotswold
household.
salted butter. You know.
It's good gear, is that?
I mean, I'm not wrong, am I, boys?
No, it's good. Nice
Yeah,
few crystal flakes on the top of that gear. That is good.
Nice, strong, mature cheddar on top of that.
Right, that's what you want. A little bit of Shropshire Blue.
No.
We've moved on from Dunelm to.
Well, no, I want more
criticism.
stats. I feel like I want more stats. Now, Rory must have more stats in the back. He looks like a man with
Come
a big
on,
clipboard.
Stato. Let's go.
That's it. We've covered all my notes.
Oh.
What stats did you want? I mean, Steve and I
don't know, make some shit up. Nobody's going to know.
Just say
Nobody's
87%
got as
of
much
statistics are made
time
up on
as
the
you,
spot, so-
Rory, to go through and validate your stats, right? So you could say any old shit.
Right, okay.
The number of times Steve has said bullshit. How often did the trumpet go off more when Sid and Andy joined the podcast? There's probably a million and one random stats you could throw into this mix.
Right, well, I don't feel comfortable bullshitting our listeners. I pride myself
Doesn't
on being...
usually stop us.
I joined in episode 62 in May 2019. Sid joined in episode 88.
Yeah,
in
mid
2020.
to late COVID, I think I joined, didn't I?
I'm pretty sure you've now been on more episodes than John said.
Entirely possible.
Oh, Christ.
I mean, there's
didn't
another
count that,
stat.
did I? Yeah,
You don't
Jesus.
have the stat of who was on what episode and how many times. Do you know what? You're a shit statistician. Actually.
Oh, that is
You
that's
spent
not
all
fair.
that time. You spent all that time, and all you got was sensible, factually correct stats. Where's
You
all
and
the
I are gonna
nonsense?
fall
How
out,
many
Gil.
London buses could we have filled with, I don't know, the amount of food conversations or Dunelm conversations? Where's that? That's what BBC News presents.
That's a bit abstract, isn't it? How many London buses can you fill with audio?
I don't know. It's always I don't know how you use London buses. I mean, London buses is a standard SI unit, isn't it?
Oh, you mean like an Olympic swimming pool?
Yeah. How many Olympic swimming pools could you
If you
fill?
stack all the board games reviewed on top of each other, how many Nelson's
Oh, there we go.
That's
We
it.
could do
There's
that
a
one.
good
How high is 589 different board games in London buses?
Jeez, I'm not going to go and find the height of the board game boxes. Right? That information doesn't exist.
And is it end on or is it flat or is it in Kallax cubes? How many Kallax cubes would those 599 games fill?
Now that is a valid question actually, because there are people who want.
None
to
of
know
this is
stuff.
valid! Shut up!
Do you know when you find someone's button and you just keep pressing it and pressing it and pressing it?
Look, I'm not happy, right? Last episode,
Really?
Sid goes off one telling me my beard looks shit, right?
No, I
because I'm
didn't.
not
I said
enough
I
of a
liked your
hobo.
beard.
Now I'm not even enough of a statistician. Kick a man while he's down, why don't you, Gil? Jesus.
It comes from a place of love, mate. I couldn't be like this to people I didn't love.
You're a cock.
Yes, he is.
Right, that's it. I'm not invited. I'm uninviting you. We're not going to go play Undaunted Callisto now. Up yours.
Oh, what? No. I retract everything that I've said. I'm really sorry, Rory. Your beard is magnificent. I would love to Velcro next to you.
Right, on a London bus next to Nelson's
On a
Convent.
London bus in a
I
swimming pool.
feel quite sick now. And it wasn't because of the kebab I had for dinner.
But hang on, what? Let's just rewind. The Undaunted Callisto. What?
I treated myself to Undaunted Callisto.
Is that what? So we can play it now?
Yeah.
You mean I can
Rory
actually
can
play
play it.
an
I can play.
Undaunted game?
Yeah.
If I hadn't been rude to you and mean to you, you would have. I could have played it. Have I just taken a big wee on my own chips?
I think you've done more than a wee, mate.
Oh. How do we come back from this one? I think there's going to be some making up to be done to Rory this episode.
We're all right, Sid. We're all right. Don't worry. I didn't mean it.
I didn't mean it, Rory. I didn't mean it. You're the best statistician.
Right, enough of this, Gil. Enough of this. Let's get on to business. Let's talk about a game. I think we should start by talking about Vrahode, Mr. Tudor.
Vrahode. We're assuming we're pronouncing that right, aren't we? And it's not Vrahode or the V silent, and it's Vrahode or Road or something.
Vrahode.
That's a great question. I wish someone had done their homework before we started. And
No, it's more fun speculating this way.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't run this podcast on cold hard facts. We run it on pure speculation.
If you're going to name your game with a weird fantasy name, you're going to have to expect it to be mispronounced. It's like when you listen to a fantasy book on Audible and you go, "Oh, is that how that name's pronounced?"
That's how they do it, yeah. No, that's a good point. It's a good point.
So Vrahode, yes, is a fantasy adventure campaign style game, big box, lots of adventures kind of thing. I'm not going to say your typical D&D fantasy because it's got its own flippity bongs and what have yous. The creatures don't follow your typical Tolkien-esque, but if you boil it down, you get 4 starting characters in the game, which are basically fighter, cleric, wizard, thief. The story begins with you starting on some kind of camp, and it seems to be that there's some ne'er-do-wells within the camp, and you're tasked with chasing after a friend of yours who's been accused of stealing thunder horns, which I believe are some kind of cow, based on what we've read. And so starts your adventure. And what this game is a map will be laid out in front of you, and it's not spiral-bound maps, but think very similar, very glossily, well-drawn maps that go out on the table, and on that map page has got your objectives. Monsters go on, and you'll start to attack. Now, what stands out straight away with this game is the console. Instead of a player board, your player board is on this like plastic stand, which makes it into a console, and you've slots you can put cards and initiative tokens and all these little pegs in it, and all the little pegs represent your health, your stats, your fatigue, how much food you've got, how much you can move, that kind of thing. The game itself is generally just these combat encounters with some story wrapped around the outside of it. So it's a very straightforward 2-action system, and you can only make 1 attack per round. So generally, most rounds you're going to be moving and attacking. Attacks are done on a d20. You have to roll under your skill to hit. You then got this special die.
It's a
6-sided dice, which numbers go from -3 to +3 without a 0.
I was about to say, that's 7 numbers, but yep, thank you for clarifying that.
So +1, +2, +3, -1, -2, -3. And that affects how much damage you do. So rather rolling for damage, you have a base damage for your weapon, you roll this, it gives you a bonus. You compare this against your enemy's mitigation, sorry, that's the number, and you do that much damage to them. And basically, combat goes around in that until you've killed everything or met the objectives of the scenario, and you can carry on the story. After a certain amount of time, and I'll get back to that in a second, you can rest, of course, and you can set up camp, and you can decide whether someone is going to set a watch. Going back to
going back to episode 154, you could pair these games off together.
And you draw a card to see how well your rest was, which allows you to recuperate health, energy, and such like. This game is, the full name is not just Vrahode, it's Vrahode Age of Prophecy, and it's on Kickstarter right now. And this is a prequel to the system, is my understanding. The designer of this has said this is intended to be a much larger set of games. So, okay, this is a big box worth of stuff. This is intended to be a prequel to what's going to more games in the future. So the intention is to do this large series. I should also say, this is a Kickstarter prototype, although it's a very, very shiny Kickstarter prototype. It looks, I would say, like the final product is supposed to look.
I would be amazed if the final product could be much better than the prototype we played.
Yes.
Is this like the prototype of Monsterlands we received that was basically just as good as the finished product?
I think this is going to be exactly the same, yeah. It's got punch boards, it's got standees for the monsters, it's got these consoles. I can't say, I mean, I'm looking at pictures of the final product, and I don't see how it's going to be any different from the prototype.
The sculpts were really good. I think the only problem we had, that problem, he says in quotes here, is that because they'd had an oil wash to really make them pop, they smelt a bit funny.
Yeah, it stank of white spirits when you took them out of the box.
But that was kind of, that's like the biggest problem, and I think that's going to be the only thing that's going to be different between this and the final copy, really, in terms of the physical product on your table.
It sounds a bit like Agamonia, if you remember that, Sid.
It does a bit.
What you and I did.
Yeah. It's a bit like a lot of games in that regard.
Okay.
So a scenario with a combat and a scenario. We'll come back to Agamonia, though. That's an interesting one. You brought that up, but you're not far wrong. It's that kind of thing. The maps are about the same size. I think these aren't in a spiral-bound book. They're the same size. They're like 2 A4 pieces of paper folded out. So it's a very, very similar kind of size. The reason I mention this Kickstarter is because things may change. So the whole thing that goes on here is something may change between us playing this and the final product coming out. But I think the Kickstarter comments page says they're even starting to put things into production now.
Wow.
Suggesting that component-wise, nothing's going to change.
Yeah, well, that'll tie into the production quality you've got now then, won't it?
Yeah, which makes sense. And I said, I think it's beautifully put together. As you said, nice minis, standees are very good. All the tokens are lovely. I mean, the little pegs are fiddly as hell. So what you have is your health monitors, these little tiny pegs that go into square slots. But because they're square slots, the one edge is missing, if that makes sense. They're like diamonds, like connected. So rather than doing a separate slot for each one, it's like connected, so they do fall out. So, I think I should hand over to you now, Rory.
Here's the setup. You now get to deliver the shit dagger.
Is this going to be a good cop, bad cop thing here?
I wanted Rory to show his opinion before I mention him, because I've thought a lot about this and I've got some deeper thoughts. But I want Rory to share his opinion first.
That's an interesting that you phrase it like that. Steve has some deeper thoughts on this, because my thoughts on this will be quite shallow, because I've not really thought about this game much since we played it. I will caveat everything I'm about to say with the fact that this is not really my type of game. I'm not a fan of Gloomhaven. I'm not, I mean, as much as I found, we played Tainted Grail this year, we've played Kings of Ruin, they were all right, they're enjoyable. This isn't really my type of jazz when it comes to board gaming. It's not really what I want. I either want an RPG or I want a board game. And this kind of middle grounding adventure game isn't my type of thing. That being said, I bounced quite hard off Vrahode. I found it simple.
Eh?
I found the gameplay itself very simple. I found
as in
it quite
formulaic?
repetitive. No, as in I felt I had no agency, no choices. I felt it's very much we out of all the chapters we played, we enter from the left-hand side of the map. We walk forward until we meet the monster. Then you roll dice to kill the monster. And then you walk to the right-hand side of the map. And then you do the next chapter. You get some more story. And you get the next map out. You start on the left-hand side. You walk up to the monster. You fight the monster. You walk to the right-hand side of the map. More story. Get there. And I found the combat wasn't exciting. I didn't find it particularly compelling. I didn't feel like we were doing much strategizing. There wasn't much tactics involved. It was very much just, let's just hit the monster.
Hit things with big sticks.
Dies.
What, D&D you mean? Oh, sorry. I said that out loud.
You wash your mouth out, Gil.
It is like a simplified D&D combat.
That must literally be hitting something with a stick and based entirely on random luck rolls.
I have a physical attribute. It was like strength, I think, and I played as the cleric player. I had to roll a d20 and score below my value, which I think was 11. So there was a 55% chance of me hitting the thing. If I hit it, I then go, how much damage did I do? Then my d6 modifier comes into it. and that's how much damage I do. Now it's your turn, Sid. I either hit it and do 1 or 2 wounds, or I miss it, and that's the end of my turn. And I've got no other actions. There's no reactions, there's no spells, there's nothing else I can do, because it's like Steve said, you move, you attack. So I'm only going to hit it once. I'm going to attack it once.
It sounds like a really simple version of a kind of a cross between Kingdom Death.
No.
You're way too high.
That's what I mean, a really simple version of that. Because that's pretty much all Kingdom Death is. It's just beat the crap out of something, pilfer it for bits, have a bit of story, go beat something else up.
No,
I realise there's more to it than that. But
I'll come in here because I was going to reference Kingdom Death, and I agree with you to a point, Andy, because combat-wise it's simplistic, and Kingdom Death combat-wise is simplistic. Roll to hit, find you which bit of the body you've hit, roll to wound. Yeah, and I remember, as I said, I've thought about this game a lot. So I was thinking, why does that work in Kingdom Death, and why does this not work?
Because you've got a deck that gives you variety and variation.
You have AI.
Yeah, you have AI. And the problem with this game is the monsters just attack either the last person that damaged them, the last person that attacked them, or a random person, or the closest person then. That's their AI. So every single combat turns into a scrum. You just end up closing up next to each other, and then just keep rolling the dice.
But to be fair, listen to what you guys have said. You've almost, to me, described Jaws of the Lion in its simplicity, in that, very simplified AI.
Right, so
go on.
Games that do this kind of thing well present a puzzle. Gloomhaven and its ilk, their puzzle is how do you optimize your hand for the best attack? Bearing in mind that you're not supposed to communicate with the people, so you're supposed to try and analyse what they're going to do and choose which 2 cards are going to be the best options. That's your puzzle in Gloomhaven. Yes, admittedly, when you start going in Gloomhaven, it is generally moving and attacking, but you have that deck of hands which you've got to manage, so that's what you're managing.
unless you're the thief like I play and go, oh, there's an awful lot of gold on this floor. You guys got this. Nice one.
Kingdom Death, what makes that a puzzle is the random AI. You don't know what the monster's going to do. So it doesn't just run up to you and attack. It's got a threat thing, which it has an AI about who it's going to attack next. And you get bonuses to hit it from the back. And once you've whittled it down a bit, you start to know what attacks are likely to come up, so you can start planning and moving to those locations.
And if you shit yourself, you can't hide in the grass as effectively, so the tiger will sniff you out.
Yeah.
Yes. That isn't here because the monsters just attack the nearest enemy.
Okay.
And I was also thinking of things like Descent, Journeys in the Dark. That's a puzzle because it's not just a line them up, knock them down fight. There's always like ways in which you can lose a combat. Agamonia, which you mentioned earlier, which was a great example because it looks like Agamonia when it's on the table. But Agamonia was very scenario based. It was like you had to break through this door with a time limit.
Yeah, there was a lot more to it. You had to think. I mean, there was also kind of distractions in Agamonia. Like, do you want to go and poke the purple flower in case it gives you a buff, or a swarm of bees, or there's a door over there. There might be an old man in the hut that can give us help, or try and climb over the hole, or
flooding taverns. There's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, there was a bit more to it.
Now, I would counter one of Rory's criticisms as well. He said he couldn't do anything, which is nonsense, because he had skills he could use. And Rory didn't use this. Yeah, okay, you had skills you could use. But I'll get to the other issue with this game. And
stop laughing at me, you guys.
It's so easy.
The other issue is, and this is more of an administrative issue, the rulebook seems to be good, but half of it's missing.
Wait, what?
We couldn't work out how you healed and got energy back. So you get energy, which are these little crystals you move between these 2 buckets, and those are how you cast your skills. So, like, Rory was doing one where he gets extra damage every round. So you do that at the beginning and you're buffed up to do extra damage. And then I could do one where if I got down to half hit points, I did 2 attacks rather than 1. So, like, there's no point spending energy on that until later. So Adam was the spellcaster, so of course he was chucking all the energy. At the end of the first fight, we go, right, I take it we get our energy back. No, you camp and you get 2 back. Oh, so we go into the next fight with just 2. Now, I've seen online people playing suggesting that you can draw the camp cards as many times as you want, but there's a risk that you'll get attacked, in which case you have to do the combat all over again.
There's a bit of a pushy look on it.
Yeah, but That's not explained properly in the rulebook. In fact, moving between maps is barely covered in the rulebook at all. And then when you do certain things, certain cards reference rules, you go, I've never seen that rule before. Like one of them was you can spend your energy crystals to heal. And it's like, well, is it 1 crystal per hit point? 1 crystal for 5 hit points? What? That's not in the rulebook. We're halfway through the game and somebody decides to look at the back of the rulebook because that's got a reference sheet just to quickly check a rule. Find out there's rules on the reference sheet which aren't in the rulebook.
Wow, that's really bad.
I mean, that to be fair though, that can be a positive as much as you're putting as a negative, because at least the bloody rules in the place where you need it.
Yeah. And it is a prototype rulebook as well. So,
yes, yeah. And that's an administrative prototype issue that can be fixed by updating the rulebook.
Fair.
But it also means that we have to put a slight caveat on this review because we might not have been playing it correctly.
There is that.
Because we can't see the rules. But I go back to, without enemy AI or something interesting happening in the scenario, nothing interesting is going to happen. All the monsters we fought were melee monsters. So there wasn't even they didn't even run away so they could get out of range. They could pepper us with arrows. They just attacked. Some of the monsters flew, and we're going, oh, what does flying do? And these little flying stands come up.
I was so impressed with that.
And then you have these little clear stands, which puts the monster standee higher up. And then what does it do? It comes down to attack and stays at the same height as the rest of you for the rest of the fight. Oh, that was a waste of time setting that up.
Oh, so there's no advantage for something flying at all?
Well, there is for the first round.
No.
It's really interesting. It sounds like you guys enjoyed the game in terms of its setting, in terms of its like concept, but just fell apart on the mechanics.
I don't know. Rory was struggling with the old flip-de-bongs and the fobbledy-doos and the Lord Farquhar.
Look, I
Fridge May.
love my fantasy literature. I love fantasy literature. I went to university to try and learn to be a fantasy writer. That's why I'm now an analyst, right? So, I really want, and that's what I think we talked about Kingdom Death Monster, why I love Kingdom Death Monster, because I found the story really engaging and I can really immerse myself in it. I found there was one thing that I found very jarring in this, that I forget the name they used here, the flip-de-bong. When the flip-de-bong was at its zenith, that is when we set out on our journey. And Steve goes, so the flip-de-bong is the sun then? It's like, if it's sun, call it the sun. Don't call it the flip-de-bong.
Gyre and gimbal in the Wabe as well.
Right, now, I'm not going to get into that conversation, right?
When you started, you said that this is a part of a much bigger thing.
Yes.
Of a bigger world, of a bigger story. And in that space, I can, at some point, Tolkien had to make his nonsense up. Before he came along, we might be having a similar conversation. Like, oh, stupid name for an elf, isn't it?
Point.
Yeah, no,
right?
No,
so these guys are creating a world out of, trying to create a whole new world that they're going to put all these games into. So I can be a bit more lenient than maybe you're being on that. But my question comes down to, is this a broken board game, or is this an RPG which hasn't quite fleshed into an RPG yet? What is it? Where does it sit in that kind of
it's trying to sit. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Agamonia, because actually it's a better example than I was thinking of. But that Agamonia, what was the other one with the Spellbound book with the toys that you played?
Stuffed Fables.
Stuffed Fables. It's following in that kind of thing. It hasn't got the modularity that, say, Gloomhaven does. But it's got that, okay, you're following this path, here are the maps, and we're going to pull out the map for this thing, and it's a preset map. So Jaws the Lion, is another example which kind of does this. So it's going for that kind of thing.
So am I developing my character as well? Is it growth? Or is it, I'm opening up boxes. What's going on here? How am I making myself better?
This was the other problem as well. There was no growth in the demo we've got. Now, again, I don't know whether this is just a demo slice to show the mechanics of the game, but there was no growth between things even. We got some extra equipment. We got you've got an extra sword. It was random, so we got some bandages, we got some food, that kind of thing. Nothing terribly exciting that made us go, ooh. I know. Oh, we leveled up one stat, I think, which was
our life. Our maximum hit points increased.
Maximum hit points went up, but we couldn't work out how to get our hit points back and replenish them anyway, so it didn't matter.
And it was...
Oh, and the dice. Can I just... Sorry, Rory,
you
I
go
am
ahead,
interrupting you, but that dice, right? This plus... this. So I tried to play it solo before Rory came over, right? This dice is the biggest arsehole dice since the Dead of Winter tooth dice.
I was about to ask, is it good or is it worse than the 11 in 12 chance of getting a 1 in 12?
Yeah. No, it's not the chances, but what it is you're already rolling a d20 to hit. So I played the fighter in our game we played as a group. I needed 12 or less. Reasonable odds, I thought. But then you rolled this dice, which swung from -3 to +3. You get a +3. You're going, yes, +3. That's loads of extra damage. I'm going to do well. Get a -3 and you go, I've done no damage, even though I've hit. And when I first played, I played with the thief character whose weapons did even less damage. And basically, I didn't do any damage, I think, most of the times I hit.
What? So it took you away from even a minimum... There's no minimum cap, so you would always... wouldn't do
again, I don't know if there's a line in the rule book that should be there that says you always do a minimum of 1 damage, but there isn't one. So if you roll 3 damage, you roll a -3. If your base damage is 3 and you roll a -3, well, that's it. And then you've got the armour of the baddie to get past
that's
anyway.
it. If your weapon is a strength 6 weapon and you're losing -3 off that from this damage dice, and then they mitigate 3 points of armour because they've got tough hide, well, that's it. You've done nothing. And you've just spent 5 turns trying to hit the damn thing. You finally do and do no fecking damage.
This sounds like Warhammer 40k 2nd edition. Yes, I've hit it with a las cannon and 12 points of that. No, it's saved its armour.
Do you know what was really good, though? What I thought was really clever was things like poison and fire damage. When you set something on fire, you get these really cool you get the little fire tokens and you strop them on there, and it burns every round, and you take a token off every round. But if it's on fire and then you set it on fire again, you do a double damage. So now every fire token does 2 wounds, and if you do bleed damage to it, it does the same thing. So there's really cool and I thought that was a really cool mechanic of how you it will continually damage the character by just getting that one good hit in first.
This is Vrahode Age of Prophecy. As I said, caveat everything we've said, that this is a prototype, so the final product may be different, and there may be changes.
I would be interested to see where future stories of this, if this is the prequel, where does the rest go?
Let's talk about Mutagen. So, Rory, you've got the information dump for this. So, what's the Kickstarter deal with Mutagen?
Mutagen will be hitting Kickstarter shortly after the airing of this episode.
Okay.
So, if you're listening to this on the day the episode's released, which is a Sunday in October.
2024.
That's not the 6th, that it's not the 15th. But
well, yeah, let's wait and see.
Right.
Dear listener, we are recording this early because I'm going on holiday, so I don't quite know when this will go out because it depends if I edit it before I go on holiday or not. But besides the points, Mutagen is a worker placement game about collecting minerals or elements of 4 different colours and 4 different solidified states: ores, crystals, liquids, and gases. You will get these by using one of your 4 workers. All 4 workers actually unlock different options on the worker placement spot. So you have 3 which are specialised and 1 robot which is a wild card, so then can be used to do on any of the spots. And basically what it means is it's typical worker placement. You go to the spot, you get that action, but you also get a second action based on which worker you send there. Unless you send the robot, and you can choose which second action you want. You also, and based on the name, are able to mutate, and you mutate one of your workers every round, and that basically gives them a 3rd and possibly 4th ability. So when you go to an action space, you can potentially do 4 different actions. Also, the mutations can be triggered when someone else goes to the same worker placement spot directly after you. So I believe this means there is a huge array of different options. I think Rory may have even calculated the variance of options available.
I did a very surface level piece of maths here. So.
Yeah. Generally, what you're doing is collecting these different coloured elements, and you can either cash them in for contracts, which get you money, effectively, which are these shards. You can store them in your ship, which gets you victory points every round, or you can send them to something, which I can't remember the thematic thing of what it was, but you send them to something and you go up some tracks. There's a track for each of the 4 elements with your little counter on, and they give you points at the end of every round. There's also like a little course you can run around, which gets you bonuses. It's very quick to begin with, but gets slower as the game goes, because as you've got more mutations, your number of options increases. There's also some end game scoring, which is largely based on collecting crew members for your ship, and these give you bonuses depending on what elements are in what aspect of the tracks that we mentioned earlier. I believe, Andy, you've played this.
I have. I played this at Expo earlier this year.
At Expo.
Yes.
So we're assuming again, we've got this Kickstarter caveat, haven't we? That because it's on Kickstarter, hasn't been published, things are subject to change. And I believe we had some rules clarifications between our first and second game, which was useful. So we're hoping that what you played at Expo is the same game I've just described.
Mostly, yes. Now, bearing in mind, I obviously have to cast my mind back into the mists of time, into the pre-industrial dystopia of May 2024. But that sounds vaguely familiar from what I remember. I also remember really struggling with the bloody colours and the different types of elements, because the purple looked like the blue, which looked like the gas, which looked like the solid, and I really bloody struggled with the iconography and the symbols on that game.
It took me 1.5 games to spot the difference between the liquid and the gas properly, so you're not entirely on your own.
That's good to know.
Also, we found, and this has been changed, but on the prototype, one of the symbols was back to front to what it is on your player board. So we thought it looked the same and couldn't work out which worker was which was annoying. But again, that's one of those ones after, because they're in the same order in each worker placement spot.
Yes.
After a couple of rounds, we got that straight away.
Because if I remember rightly, at the time, it was one of the games that we were quite keen to try and play at Expo. There's a bit of hype around it. I remember Rory mentioning it as one of the games to look out for.
I was looking forward to this quite a lot. I like worker placements.
But you guys didn't manage to get a seat, did you? Because it was mobbed.
I managed to get a seat when no one else did. So I was just stood there on my own for 15 minutes waiting for someone else to turn up.
Right, okay. Yeah, Laura and I sat down and played it with a couple of others. So we played a 4-player game, which I expect is probably how the game was intended to be played, because you get this competition, because there's only 4 worker spots at each location, if I remember rightly. So There's obviously this...
They are player number limited, so it's the number of worker placement spots is equal to the number of players.
Right, okay, so that makes a bit of sense. But yeah, there was quite a bit of competition for each of the areas, which did make it slightly interesting. And I did like the idea of all the your different workers can do different things. So you had to think a little bit ahead to try to decide where your workers were best placed. But I walked away from that game thinking, it's all right. It did not set my pants on fire. I found the theme to be utterly meaningless. I didn't get anything from it at all. It could have been about anything. It really could have been. I found the upgrades a little confusing, because certainly in our version, you just kind of stuck on any little basically power glove.
The power glove, the version we had, the power glove matched the card.
Okay. So that was probably,
So yeah, we haven't mentioned that. So you get these really chunky big meeples, and when you get these mutagen upgrades, they upgrade their hands, and you get little rubberized plastic hands that slot on.
Which is quite nice.
So you can which is really cool. So you could see which players had an upgrade, which is really important. And you could see, once you really worked out which was which, you could see which upgrades they had from looking at these.
Okay, that's better.
Because the crab claw was always the same. If you had the crab claw appendage, that was always going to be the same bit of benefit. So you knew what your opponents you were potentially going to allow them to trigger.
Right, okay. I did find it quite linear. Which is quite ironic, given that you could go one place and it would kick off 15 other things, and everything was linked together, potentially. But ultimately, I find basically going to the track where you get lots of additional stuff and race around this little loop in the little corkscrew, basically just that's going to win you the game. Done.
Now, I disagree with you, but I will get to that later.
Okay. But I found it okay. I didn't find it particularly exciting. I'm in no rush to play it. I didn't hate it.
Now, I'm going to caveat what I think. I'm going to let Rory mull and go, with background. I'm going to caveat what I got. We've played it twice, and that's all we've had time to before we've had to record this podcast. This is a Kickstarter game, and we've received it
Saturday,
basically.
and it is now Monday.
Days before, and we've had to play it twice. And coming back, I would say my first game, Andy, I agree with you. My second game, I felt a bit more about it, but I will say I went through the full gamut of emotions and opinions of this game across the two games. So the first game, I felt very much like you did. By about halfway through the second game, I thought, oh no, actually no, this is better than that. There's more nuance to that. But by the end, I thought I'd found the winning strategy, which is what you said. And actually, I was hoping we could have played a third game because there's one more strategy I want to try. And I want to see if it beats the strategy I did.
Load up your magic box and get points every round.
Yeah.
Oh, load up your magic box.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, load up your magic box on your board.
Yeah, because you've got you got the bit that you could spend, and you've got the bit that you lock in and you can't spend after it's been locked in, but it gets you points.
Yeah.
One of the two of the players that we played against did that, and they did okay. I kept just going onto the little sort of racetrack bit because no one else did, and I murdered them, frankly.
Yeah. And I'd like the first game was trying things out. The second game, I just went right. I'm just going to put things into as you said, my magic box, which is your ship thematically. And at the beginning of the game, everyone was ahead of me. Then after the end of the third round, I was
just rocketed ahead,
half a board ahead, to the point where Rory changed his strategy to try and beat mine.
Which was really good. Which was really good fun. I think in a game is that I had a strategy. I was going to do this thing. And then I saw that Steve was pulling ahead, and I had to pivot to try and close that gap down. And too much time had passed. I wasn't efficient enough to do it because I wasn't geared up to play catch up. But I found that interesting as something that has occurred and evolved over the course of the game. I was doing quite well to start with. Steve pulled ahead, and I was racing then, and that made it was really nice competition for me to do there.
My thing with this game was I found the decision-making quite complex because you had so many worker placement spots you could go to, fair enough, basic actions, but the secondary actions were important. So sending the right worker to the right place was important. Also, the tertiary actions of your mutations were important, so you wanted to try and get them on the board early so you could react, but you often needed money to react to them, so you had to either get money by putting a certain worker down here or fulfilling contracts, and contracts were only worth money, they were worth bugger all victory points, so I felt they were utterly worthless, and there was this really big decision space. And what the problem I had was once I'd made that decision and done something, I had a minor thing had happened. And I compared it to, say, like a Lacerda game, where you have this big decision making, and by the end of it, you pull off this big combo and you get a load of points. Whereas this game didn't get the big load of points. It basically had all the work and none of the little reward that pings off my little goblin brain.
There was a lot of effort for not much.
Yeah. At the end of the game, you could argue the reward was the end of the game when you scored the points. But I felt that it missed that little dopamine hit when you do a lot of effort and get the result at the end of it.
Give you a little hair fluffle. Oh, well done. Here's a biscuit.
But there were times when we played last night where you were like, I'm going to place my spy here and I'm going to collect this. And because of this mutation, I'm going to do this. And then I've got all of these things. And then I'm going to do this. And I'm going to score 6 points here and get this and do this. And I was like, you feel dead smug with yourself now, don't you, Tudor? And he just like, look, the nodding Churchill dog. Yes, I do, Rory, because I'm winning and I'm winning more now. And it was brilliant. And I had that as well.
True. You're right, I did get them.
I had that, like, there was one time where I went and did this and I'd set my little engine. I know what I want to accomplish this round and I'm going to do this, to do this, to do this. And I achieved it and I felt really smug that I managed to pull it off and no one was able to stop me. Nobody saw me, nobody cheated me out of that card or that element. Did it and I got all of those points and that's gone towards my endgame strategy. I did get the dopamine hit. But you're right. There is a lot of decisions to make because I think, as Steve said, there are 6 different locations. Each location has 4 potential workers that can go there, and then you've got all your mutations on top of that. So there's potentially at the beginning you've got 24. Was that 4 sixes? Yeah, 24 potential worker slots to go to, to get 2 bonuses and what you want to start doing. And there were so many times when we were playing that you go, right, I'm going to do this. And then 5 minutes later you go, oh, you dickhead, you've done the wrong thing. That's not part of the plan. And there was a lovely moment. I wasn't able to film it yesterday, where Steve sat there cupping his hands in front of his mouth. If I do that, I do this. And he goes on this lovely little Euro game monologue, talking to himself about his turn. And then he does it, and then 5 minutes later he realises he does it wrong. And that's hilarious to watch.
That is true. I've seen that as well. It is very, very funny.
And that's what I think every good Euro game needs to trigger that in a player, where they have those moments you go, I'm going to do this, that, and that, and you do that little mumble. I like to call it the Euro game mumble monologue, and I think every good one has it. And Mutagen definitely has it.
Now, this morning, I think it was this morning, when I was driving to work, knowing that we were going to be talking about this evening, I actually predicted to myself, and I should have said this before we started, but never mind. I was going to say, I think one of you quite enjoyed this, and one of you was lukewarm about it. And it turns out I was entirely correct. The annoying thing is, I was the wrong way round. I thought Rory would be lukewarm about this and Steve would enjoy it. But I also knew I would be wrong.
I enjoyed this. I thought it was really neat. I think it's a really neat twist on the worker placement game. I think it does something different and new with worker placements.
I don't know. I think you're right. Lukewarm is a good way to describe it, Andy. I will happily play it again. And in fact, I would like to poke at it a bit more and try the two other strategies. But I have a funny feeling this game has 1 or 2 more plays in it left for me.
Yeah.
And then I feel as if I might have explored everything I can.
I think it suffers, for me certainly, it suffers the issue that it's just a little bit too light, or it's lacking something to keep my attention. Sid's referred to this, I think, in one of our Christmas podcasts a little while ago, which is why I tend to avoid light games, because once I play them once, they're not going to surprise me after that. Whereas, something like a Lacerda will always do that because it's just batshit crazy hard. And this, I think I'm the same as you, Steve. I didn't hate it at all, and I do like the upgrading sort of worker thing, and that was quite nice. But I don't really see what else it can show me that excites me or interests me. If you put it in front of me, I'll play it, but I'm not going to seek it out.
I think you're wrong there. I think the discovery is quite high, because I think the way what mutations you opt for, what you take, and who you apply them to, and where you start sending your workers out to will change how you approach it.
Yeah, and I think Mutagen in its current state is missing that little oomph of variability that's going to make the game interesting every time.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really interesting, fun twist on a worker placement. And I would happily and gladly own and play this and introduce people to worker placements through this game.
Interesting. You are entitled to your opinion, even if it is wrong.
Well, that was Mutagen from Dranda Games. I rate it. I think it's worth going and have a look at. I thought it was good fun.
Again, we will have a link in the show notes. Go check it out.
So we're going to move on to another game that is on Kickstarter when this episode comes out.
It's almost like a Kickstarter themed episode.
It is a Kickstarter themed episode. We haven't done one of those, a themed episode, for a while, which actually was episode 49 was the last time we did a themed episode.
Look how painful that made him. His face was. He couldn't.
Did.
He just picked a number and he fought to
Tell everybody
get it
I lied,
out.
you cock.
But your face was important because it physically hurt you to make up that statistical lie.
You could see my pissing face. Everybody else has listened to this. Everybody else would have bought that.
But we have integrity. We're not going to lie to our listeners, Rory.
But mate, everybody would have seen through it. Look, if we could keep this, we could cut this bit out, right? And then we could see whether people would believe you. And then you could release this as one of your little fancy things and prove that
you were right. Okay,
Psych!
Psych, didn't really happen.
People will go back and listen to 49. Actually, you know what? You'll get a massive spike on episode 49 now if you just let that happen.
Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Let's talk about Timeless Journeys, the Italian Grand Tour. So this is published by Lirius Games, who previously have done, this is their second game, and their previous one was Age of Comics, which I really enjoyed because I love comic books. But this game is designed by Nestor Mangon and Andrea Rabini. So this is Andrea's first game, but Nestor you might recognise from Darwin's Journey, Newton, Autobahn, the upcoming Baghdad, which we talked about in the last game. So Nestor has done some great games, and I've really enjoyed the ones I've played so far. But in this game is, as I said, the Italian Grand Tour. So this is set in Renaissance period Italy, and you're going to be travelling through Italy, trying to write a book.
A series of mid-engine sports cars with a couple of your mates, where you get into all kinds of mischief and breakdowns.
No, Andy. You're going to be going to cafes and chatting, and you're going to be exploring these gorgeous cities in 18th century Italy, and thinking about things like art and history and philosophy and mathematics. And then you're going to be
pretty much what Hammond, May, and Clarkson do. They just use different words.
I've clearly been getting different trailers for.
Well, all right. James May tries to, but the other two ruin it for him.
So the idea is you're moving around, you're going around Italy, and you're doing these things, and you collect, and then you're trying to write your book. And at the end of the game, you're going to score points for how many aspects of your book you've written. But at the core of this game, it is a really clever kind of hand management, hand building, almost like, I think Sid and I worked out, it's a kind of like a progressive action programming game. Mm-hmm. Because you start the game with 7 cards, and you're going to be able to, and these 7 cards, they give you various actions like move, explore, write a letter to a friend, make a friend. They give you various bonuses. And over the course of the game, you're going to buy more cards, and you'll acquire cards at the end of every round anyway. And you have to pare back down to 7 cards, or 8 cards, I think it is. But then every round, you're only ever going to be able to play 5 of them. And which 5 you play, and in which order you play them, becomes really, really important, because there's this great pairing system going on here that if I play a pink card, every subsequent pink card I play allows me to play every previous pink card. But I actually get, so if I play a pink movement card, I forget the colours now.
I'm not the only one that had a stroke there then.
Yeah, I've forgotten the colours of the cards now because it's been a while, because I've had to send it on. But I think green was movement, so green would allow me to move and explore in a city. And I can all right, I'm going to start with my green card. I'm going to explore the city I'm in, and then I'm going to move one space on the map. My next green card allows me, and in any order, I can play the green card I've just done, which is a double movement, or I can play the previous green card.
And then if I play a card, if you've already played it.
It reactivates.
It reactivates the previous green card. Then I play another green card, and then again I get to activate all my green cards. However, the more different card suits I play, the better the card I get at the end of the round.
So it's a bit like Wingspan in that sense. Because you activate a row.
I see what you mean. Yeah, how you activate a row, but this is more of the cards that it really is more like it's
you get a bit more
programming.
Chance to monkey around with them, but okay.
You get to because you get to pick those cards up every round and then put them down in a different order, and you get to add new ones to your hand. And that is where this game, I think, really shines. I think Sid and I had, or I'm speaking for Sid, it's unfair for me to do that right now. I had a lot of fun, and that great puzzle of what cards do I want to play? What order do I want to play them? Which ones do I want to be able to reactivate when? What am I trying to do? Where am I trying to go to achieve what? And that is to go to cities, and then there's loads of different ways you can score points. So, like I say, you can go to cafes and trade in your tokens that you're going to collect. And essentially it's just going for a chat and philosophizing in a cafe will score you points. And the cafes further down south of the board are worth more points. Or you can try and explore as much of Italy as possible and write loads of stuff in your book, which is worth loads of points as well. Or you can chase the famous characters that are wandering around. So I think we've got like Joseph Addison, Lord Byron. John Keats, and you can try and chase
Shelley. You had all
Mary
sorts
Shelley
of
as well.
yeah.
There's these famous characters that appear and move around the city, and they will give you various bonuses as well if you can be in the right place at the right time.
So, would you say that it is probably the best Renaissance game in the world?
Well, it's a really interesting game. It is I mean, when Rory suggested this, I was like, yeah, all right. We'll give it a punt.
It's a dull theme, isn't it? Upper class English person going for a holiday to Italy is not an interesting
It
thing.
sounds like Tilitum.
No, it's not, because it's not as beige as that. There's a bit of pastel in this one, but the thing about this game, right? And do you know what? I'm glad I was proved wrong.
For the record, I quite like Tilitum.
I was totally wrong on my first impression of this game. I would never have picked it up off a shelf. I played it because I kind of felt like I had to contribute something to this podcast. And
play that having a sense of duty.
A bit of duty, yeah. I felt like I had to have a stiff upper lip and think of England, even though it pained me immensely. But anyway, the thing about this game is it got progressively more interesting. And we finished a game of it, and we looked at each other and went, I want to play again. And we did, straight away. And it's the second game that I found even more interesting, and that's when I started saying, oh, this feels like after about the second or third round, I'm programming my hand for that round, and all I have to do is remember which cards to put down in the right order. And I kind of liked it. It became really clever about what you picked up, but it took those first two rounds. So the first two rounds were a bit like scavenging for the right things to put in your hand.
That's a great
and then by
way
the
of thinking about it.
the third round, you were on a plan, you were on a route, and if you could just get things to land where you wanted, to manipulate the board a little bit, manipulate your position on the board a bit, you could just play and trigger your combo moves. And you know that dopamine hit you were talking about, Steve, earlier? I got this in fucking spades playing this.
A ruffle of hair and a biscuit.
Wow. Absolute bucketfuls.
Which is ironic, given your hair, your follicular challenge situation.
And I'll tell you why it happened. It happened because every time what you'd kind of planned and prepped in your hand came off just right, and by the last round, I had to say, well, we've got to stop, mate. I've got to think about this hand really carefully. We both had an extra 5 minutes or so just working out what order we had to put these cards in. And there was plenty of, oh, shit. Oh, no, it's okay. It was all that roller coaster of emotion that went up and down in this game. And I ended up absolutely bloody loving it.
Yeah, I remember specifically on the last round of the last game we played, Sid was like, I go, right, I think I fucked it, Rory. I think I fucked it. I've definitely fucked it. And he'd play a card. No, I should have done. And then he'll play the next card and go, oh no, I've done it. It's fine. It's all right. I'm there. And it's like there was maybe 10 seconds between those two things happening, and it was so much fun to watch, and it was so much fun to play because of that.
It was joyous. Genuinely, it was. Ignore the theme, right? The theme is completely around. This could have been about bloody socks and underpant monsters for all the difference it made, right? It was, to me, the theme didn't matter. What was really clever about was how it made you think about where you were going to go and how you're going to trigger the abilities of the roving literary people that went around. And if it just worked, the way that you played your strategy, where you'd moved, about the second round in, you'd see your strategy. That was what happened for me. About the second round in, I go, right. Because then in the second game, I just followed this one guy around, doubling up on combos.
Yeah. I think you were following John Keats around Italy, weren't you?
Somebody like that, yeah. And so much in this game that it hides behind a really crap theme. If this had been reskinned, right, weirdly, as like a Star Wars game, right, and you were following different Star Wars characters around, I would have picked it up in a heartbeat. And I'm sure there's other people that would have loved the literary theme. but I didn't care. But by the end, I didn't care. I wanted to play more. Like now, I'm talking about it. I really want to go and play again because I want to see what the other literary greats that might come out are that I won't know.
There was not only that, it's like the way
stupid.
we scored points differed. Was a massive variation. Like Sid, in the second game, Sid chased a very particular strategy. And I didn't combat it, and he was able to run away with it. But he scored a tremendous amount of points doing something very different to the way I scored a tremendous amount of points. And that was very different from the first game. And I also think this game scales really interestingly. I've played this at Expo at 5 players, and the way everybody can score points is very, very different. And even at the high play, it doesn't. Those additional players doesn't increase the time of the game, but it will impact the way the game's played massively. So there's a little thing like every city you can make friends in each city, and you can write a letter to that friend and they'll give you bonuses, and that becomes really, really important. It's also another aspect of how you fulfill your book, and when and how often you can trigger those is a great way of kind of income. But there's only 2 friends in every city, which means if you're third person to that city, you're potentially not going to be able to get a friend there. So there's a little bit of a race in this game as well. You've got to race around whilst trying to maximize the efficiency of the engine that you're building. But it's an action programming game, but it's progressive in what you're going to program. Every round you can almost plan, I'm definitely going to play these 3 cards next round. I'm definitely going to play these 4 cards. I'm definitely going to play these 5 cards in my last round. Well, that's your last round just done. Mm-hmm. And the game flies because of that.
The last round is super fast because literally Rory and I were just bang, 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 done.
Yeah, because you've been building your engine for the last hour. And in the 5th round, you just execute it. And it's a joy to just go, this one, and this one, and this one, and I'll do that, bang, there's my final score, sorted.
Till you get it wrong.
Unless you get it wrong.
But even when you get it wrong, that crushing defeat of f***ing it up is so powerful an emotion. It works. It is genuine. Honestly, this game is way cleverer than I could have ever have imagined it.
Right.
Picking it up off the shelf. It genuinely... and it's not multiplayer solitaire either, because it can come across that we're playing individual games, but we weren't, because we were interfering with each other. We were getting in each other's way by the markets. We were getting in the way of each other by how we picked cards from the common draw pile, kind of marketplace. And we got in each other's way by stealing the tokens, the explore tokens, etc., from the
cities and from making
from the
friends.
Cities. Yeah,
because if you make a friend with Johnny, I can't make a friend with Johnny. I've got to make a friend with Jane. That robs me of that resource. And it
exactly.
Yeah, like I say, the theme didn't really hit me very well. And we actually spent a good 10 minutes afterwards talking about how if it was Star Wars and that was Leia and that was Han and that was Boba Fett and and that was Tatooine and this is Planet Hoth and stuff. That theme would have resonated more with me, or if it was more of a generic fantasy, I would have found it more keen. I don't know if that's because Renaissance Italy is just... You say it's a boring theme, but then I find farming a really boring theme in games as well. There's so many themes that I just find dull, but I do think that might actually be... people aren't going to pick this game up off the shelf because of the theme, and that's a shame because it's a quality game.
That's the key to it, is the biggest challenge this game has is people picking up off the shelf. And if we can do anything to change that, then as far as I'm concerned, we've succeeded in this podcast, because this game deserves to be picked up off the shelf and played.
Yeah,
genuinely
absolutely.
believe that.
Oh, right, okay.
But I think that might be kind of a thing.
That's very high praise, this is.
Honestly, mate, I would, as I said right at the start, I felt like I was doing my duty to earn my seat on this podcast. And you know what? I had the best couple of hours
Rather
playing
than
the
just
game
abusing
that I'd had
Stato.
in ever. No, genuinely, I was just so wrong. I'm happy to admit it. I was massively wrong about this game based on its looks, and that is, if you can't get a game off the shelf onto the table, it doesn't matter how good it is. People won't be able to play it. And for me, it was simply the theme that created that for me.
But looking at Nestor's other games, if you think about Darwin's Journey, again, that's hitting that kind of era of world. He's done another game called Newton. Guess who that's a game's about? There's a game, Stupamundi. He does
Schrodinger.
All of his games have this kind of Renaissance, that 18th, 19th century European theming to them. If you're interested, if you like Nestor's previous games, this is probably one that's going to fit right at home with your other Nestor Man Gone games on your shelf. The theme is not going to put you off because you already know how great a designer he is. If you have not ever played any of Nestor Man Gone games before, this is a great place to start. It is an absolutely cracking game. And if you like action programming, definitely just go all in with it. Just do it.
Yep. Yeah, amongst it. Absolutely.
So that's Timeless Journeys, the Italian Grand Tour from Lirius Games.
We have just enough time for a couple of questions from the old mailbag.
Ooh.
So, Andy,
oh God.
Pick a question.
Pick a question.
Yeah.
Shit. Ooh. Do you have a game that you only or very rarely play without a particular expansion? This is from Alex Eels. He always plays Star Wars Rebellion with Rise of the Empire expansion. So do you play something without a particular expansion? Actually, quite a few. And I think this is quite opposite for me because I do have a few expansions.
I might have mistyped his question.
Oh, really?
I think it's do you ever play a game? You only ever play a game with a particular expansion.
Ah, now that changes it very, very. That changes it quite a lot.
Yes, that's me writing it in a rush this morning.
Well, that's okay. I can flip, pivot, or whatever you want to call it. I was going to say I played Solken with the base game and don't play with its expansion because its expansion shit. But to actually answer the question that has been asked and ignore our administrative oversight, then I think it's going to have to be, actually, we mentioned it already, Viticulture. Because once you've played Viticulture with the Tuscany expansion, you can't go back. The expansion changes it that much and for the better. That if you do go back to the base game, you're like, this is so simple and boring. No, we're going back to Tuscany now. So it's got to be Tuscany for me for Viticulture.
It's a very good shout. For me, it's Seven Wonders Duel. I love Seven Wonders Duel. And if I have my choice, I will always play it with the Pantheon and the Senate expansions.
I was going to ask you which one, but you've said both, so fair enough.
Both. If I had to choose between the two, I would choose Pantheon.
See, I would agree.
But I would ideally play it with both. I don't think it adds that much overhead to add both, but it does increases the game. It makes it so much richer.
I can't disagree with that, actually. That's a good shout. They are good expansions for Duel.
Ruthless, isn't it?
The ones I can think of. The only I can think of off the top of my head is we only ever play Carcassonne with the River expansion. Partly because it stops the mad scramble for farms, which can come out. And I don't generally like most of the other expansions for Carcassonne because they make the game longer, which means its whole thing of being a snappy little game you can play quickly kind of goes out the window. It's going to be a stupid one, but the first expansion for Eldritch Horror is an essential because it expands all the decks and gives all the variety. It doesn't actually add any extra rules; it just adds more stuff. Whereas all the expansions after that added extra rules, which bogged the game down a little bit.
I would also suggest the Pegasus expansion for BSG.
Oh yes, because that suddenly makes it worthwhile being a Cylon and outing yourself.
Yes, and you can also put people in an airlock and flush them into space, which is nice.
Yes.
Even if they may or may not be a Cylon, Steve.
I'm going to add one, Ruthless, which I know none of you guys have played because you're idiots. But I always play that with the Chests and Quests and the Notorious Pirates now. Maybe we can play that next week, Sid.
Oh.
Terribly boring farce with Prelude because it starts the game faster and doesn't take a fortnight to get going.
I like that it takes a fortnight to get going in that. I like that it ramps up. I like the escalation in that game. But there you go. I think that answers that question, doesn't it?
Quite comprehensively.
We've actually had the same question from a few people from various sources, and which is what happened to the top 100 challenge?
Yes, gentlemen, what has happened to that top 100 challenge? Do
Tell us the story,
us.
boys.
What challenge are you talking about?
The analogy is it's currently a flaming wreck at the side of the road.
Nice.
Basically, what happened is Expo happened, and we picked up a few review games from Expo, as you do, and then some people sent us some review games after speaking to us at Expo, and then we sorted out the sponsorship with Kienda, so we got some review games with that. Basically, we've got such a big back. What are you waving in front of us now, Rory?
Is that another one you've just bought? Or is that
this is the one from Hachette. Hachette sent us this giant box. It's probably bigger than John, of board games.
Wow.
So, yeah, we've...
Yeah, but basically, you're very fortunate to have lots of review copies, but also means that we basically have to spend every moment of our gaming time playing review games.
We are basically more backed up than a man on a purely protein diet. Is that what you're saying?
I'm more interested in hearing how these two boys aren't going to fail their challenge.
Oh, they're going to fail it.
Because I feel like this is the softly approach to, oh, sorry, you couldn't quite achieve what we set ourselves.
We are currently, according to my schedule, we are 26 games behind target.
Or, as I correctly predicted last year, on a track to fail.
Well, we were actually on track until Expo. Yeah. So we'd made it 5 months being perfectly on track.
And 5 months being off track.
Yeah.
Look.
Past performance is no reflection on future performance.
Just look, right, if we just stopped the challenge in June and just said we'd played this many games per month, I'd still want to carry on. I still want to play all those games. And the top 100 has changed a little bit since then. There's like 6 or 7 extra games come in, some of which I've never even heard of, which is bizarre. But yeah, I would like to carry on and try and see if we can carry this challenge on. But the timeline is the issue, and it's gone completely out the window.
I think we might be all right, Steve.
In
I just need to find an appropriate way to ask you to come on a weekend away with me without it being weird. Let's just go.
Even a weekend away, it's going to get what? It's just going to knock out off.
You can't say,
games.
Steve, you can't say we're going to have a weekend away and then follow it with the words knock off. That's not allowed.
And even if you do that, you'd probably only play about 4 games. Because you take the really hefty ones, because it was a weekend away. You'd play 2 games a day, and that'll be it.
Well, you mentioned Oathsworn earlier. We'd take Oathsworn and we'd play as much of that as we possibly could.
Okay, 2 weekends away. Fine. Look.
We basically need to stop work now and then spend October, November, and December just playing games.
Just fucking sign me up.
So if anyone wants to enter the Euro Millions and sort that out for us, that'd be lovely.
Donations are well received.
I mean, you've got literally 3 months till the end of the year.
Oh yeah, it's not going to happen. So have you seen our review backlog?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for you lot to admit failure rather than.
Oh, no, I'm not admitting failure until 1 minute to midnight on the 31st of December.
I look forward to that.
Happy
New Year, Steve, and congratulations on your pitiful failure.
Maybe just 1 minute to midnight. We just put an Instagram post that just says we failed.
Well, does that mean we now set the competition to see how many games you fail by?
Well, that's just mean.
But amusing.
It could be fun though, couldn't it? Somebody could win an actual prize.
It's not going to be me and Rory, is it?
Well, no, you can't win your own prize.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is literally an awesome sweepstakes now,
right?
Because we've got. What did you say? You played 26.
We have played 43 games.
Of the 100.
So a number between 1 and 57 to see how many.
0 and 57 said. Let's be realistic.
I was going to assume you play 1 game in the next 3 bloody months.
As I said, based on the review pile, I'm not convinced.
You're giving them too much credit there, mate.
It sounds like the excuses are all being made right
That's
now.
not a bad
This
shout,
is-
actually, Sid.
this
We
is
could
an-
run
this is
a
an
side
abandoned
pot
thing.
on this.
Yeah, we
and
could.
we'll run a book. Actually, write in, guess how many games Steve and Rory are actually going to manage to play from the top 100 between now and the end of the year. And Sid and I will then decide on a prize.
Yeah, I reckon this is on now. This might give you some encouragement.
There you go.
To actually play our game.
Ooh.
My vote is 1, by the way, and that's a generous. That's a generous one.
Hang on, that's not fair because we've got Twilight Imperium booked in for around your birthday for the annual game of Twilight Imperium.
Yeah, but doesn't mean you actually play it, right? So,
Our point.
Right, with the gambling addiction sorted for another week, we should draw this veil to a close. I think that's the right word.
Draw a
I don't
veil
care.
over this.
Carrying on. Yes.
Draw this veil to a
Metaphor.
close.
Shut up.
Why not?
Let's close these curtains. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, everyone. If you enjoy this, please give us a review on iTunes and share us with your friends. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Polyhedron Collider, and Board Game Geek Guild 2726. By the way, any social media interactions feed the algorithm, and everyone knows the algorithm needs feeding, which helps promote the podcast. Of course, just like every other episode, this is sponsored by Kienda. If you fancy a board game, and let's be fair, if you're listening to this podcast, you're going to buy a board game, go to the link in the show notes, which will take you to a nice juicy discount for our listeners. But until next time, happy gaming.
Ta-ra.
cheerio.
Bye-bye.